Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. Bending over backwards, buyers give us the inside story on how far you need to go. During our last webinar on April 15th, Turning the Table, clients tell us how you can win their business. Our powerful panelist of buyers did not hold back, and they told us what they like and what they don't like from salespeople. It's more than jumping through hoops or performing cartwheels. Today's demanding clients and buyers have once again raised the bar, and they expect so much more from you, the salesperson. During this webinar, we asked the question to one of our panelists, what would it take for you to switch vendors? Brian Moore, General Manager of Greyhouse Publishing, simply said, bend over backwards. And the other panelists jumped in and agreed. Well, this created quite a buzz. We had emails and phone calls, tweets, people asking us, what does this mean? Give us more details and specifics. So we went back to the buyers, did some more research and some interviews, and also I took the opportunity to really observe salespeople in the trenches during the past 6 weeks to find out more about how you can bend over backwards, and that's exactly what we're going to be sharing in this afternoon's webinar. This webinar is brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association. CPSA is Canada's leader in developing and serving sales professionals by providing programs and benefits that help you sell more and sell smarter. I'm Lisa Leitch, CSP, sales strategist, speaker, and coach with Teneo Results. Teneo is a CPSA sales training partner. We help create high-performing sales teams and create stronger sales culture with extraordinary results through our CPSA training, coaching, and sales strategy services. And we're having a lot of fun working with many teams these days. So we have over 350 eager salespeople registered on today's webinar who want to learn more on how to bend over backwards. So today I've invited 2 sales leaders who will share their perspectives on what they've done with their sales teams to create stronger sales teams and improve their sales skills, and overall change the sales culture and the caliber in their organizations. So please welcome Corey and Marianne. Let me introduce our panelists here. Corey Smith is the Chief Marketing and Sales Officer with SEM Insurance Services. Corey's been with SEM for 4 years, and he oversees a sales team of 40 people. He's also a new dad. He's got a 5-week-old baby, Avery, who's keeping him up awake at night along with his sales team. So welcome, Corey. And let me introduce Marianne Thompson, VP of Corporate Development with Alexandria Molding. Marianne has been with Alexandria Molding for 3.5 years, but has more than 20 years of experience in her industry. She oversees a sales team of 13 reps, 3 sales managers, and a director of sales. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have both of you here. I've had the opportunity of working with both Corey and Marianne during this past year, and I'm really impressed by both of them. Their initiative, their sales leadership skills, and their desire to create a winning team has really been impressive. Well, and obviously their bosses both felt that way too, because they both were promoted to these senior executive sales leadership roles during the past few months. So congratulations to both of you. Oh, and they're fairly quiet right now. We'll wait until they start sharing their perspectives. So let's take a look at.
You're just making us blush, Lisa.
That was about the new baby, right?
That's right.
So let's take a look at what we're going to be covering off in today's agenda. We've got a 1-hour webinar planned here. We're going to begin with interactive polls. Many of you who know my style and about the consultative selling process, it's all about asking questions. So we have questions to ask of you to find out where you're at with your sales. We're going to share the biggest strategies to improve your results, but we're also going to share the simplest techniques to score points with your clients and prospects to help you earn their trust and their business. We're going to share with you what do buyers really want and kind of do a quick summary of what we learned in that April 15th webinar. Then we're going to walk you through the 5 phases of the purposeful sales conversation and provide you with those specific techniques and examples of bending over backwards. And Corey and Marianne are certainly going to share their insights on what they're seeing both from when salespeople approach them, to sell to them, and also what their sales team is doing in their sales trenches. So during this next hour, we want to help you to identify what these strategies and techniques are. And I'm going to share with you, we're not going to share anything new or earth-shattering. In many cases, many of you will say, I've heard this before. But when I have the opportunity to speak and work with many sales leaders, what they say is many of our people have done training, they've heard these things, but there seems to be a huge gap between what we know and what we actually are doing in the sales trenches. And here's the most interesting stat, is that actually buyers stated that less than 10% of salespeople are really great salespeople. Whew, that stat hurts. But here's an even stronger point. When we asked them about creating a compelling reason to meet, the buyers stated that less than 2% of salespeople are creating a compelling reason why they should meet. So if you have any questions during this next hour, you can put them in the chat box, or you can also tweet us through your Twitter account at Teneo Results. And we look hearing your questions, your comments, and certainly Shannon of our office will be fielding all of those questions. So let's begin with the interactive polls. We've got 4 key questions that we want to be able to ask you. So the first question is, how much do you prepare before you meet with a new prospective client? So here's your options. First one, none, I just wing it. I look at the company website. I spend time researching industry trends and company news about them, and I prepare a list of questions in advance. So we want to hear from you. What is it that you're doing to prepare before you meet with a new prospect? Shannon, am I ready to move on to the next question? So question number 2. How much do you prepare before you meet with an existing client? So here's your options. None. I know my client well enough. I think about it while I'm driving to the meeting. Some of you are chuckling with this, but these are typical responses we hear. I review my sales to date with the client before I meet with them. I prepare a list of questions in advance. Or I have a documented account plan for this client. Third question. What methods of connecting do you find most effective? During our April 15th webinar, we had a real diversity of what works for different types of buyers. So we want to hear, what is it that you find is most effective, the most effective one? Telephone call, text or BBM, email, LinkedIn, using InMail, or a direct mail. And for those of you who were on the last webinar, Bernard Weinstein, of the president of Caber Sherfit, said the most effective way to get his attention would be the handwritten letter. Whereas on the opposite spectrum, Shalini Taylor, who works with Corey, said text or BBM is what works most effectively for her. We want to find out from you, the salespeople. And the fourth and final question. Here we are, we're into June. We're almost halfway through this calendar year. For many of you, that's your fiscal year. So we want to see where you're at with your sales, kind of get a pulse of what's happening. Have you increased your sales over last year, and how much? First response, no, I'm under by 10% or more. I'm under by less than 10%. Stayed the same. I'm up between basically 1 and 10%. And yay, I've increased my sales, double-digit growth, by 10% or more. So Shannon is going to tabulate those responses, and we're going to be sharing the responses to those 4 polls at the very end of our webinar today. Looking forward to seeing what those responses are. So let's find out, what do buyers really want from you, the salespeople? Well, I'm just going to quickly summarize what they said based on April 15th webinar, and speaking to so many buyers since. We had a cross-section of buyers from human resources to marketing to a CEO to a general manager in a number of different industries. So really, really good cross-section. However, what they're looking for in many cases was the same. The most important thing that they said was to be more prepared for the call, both for a first appointment or for even meeting an existing client. They highly recommended that you do more research and be more prepared. If you're trying to actually reach somebody, we asked them the most effective method to get a hold of them. And this is where we saw a lot of variety and diversity, from that handwritten letter to email to texting. However, one of the things we did here is the good old-fashioned telephone is not working very, very well. They said that you've actually got to use somebody like a referral or have a very compelling reason. They said you have to be quick. Don't even take the time to say, how are you? Get right to the point. The buyers were also really tough, and they said when they hear a script or a cookie cutter type of presentation, they love to throw a curveball to watch you waffle, because that's when they can really differentiate between a good and a great salesperson. And when you can demonstrate that you're great, then they're willing to give you more time. So you have to create a quick, compelling reason with benefits and customized for their company on why they should meet with you. Now, Shalini, she's a human resources and training manager, one of our buyers. She talked a little bit about what a salesperson could do in the meeting. She said, start the meeting on time with an agenda, a purpose to the meeting, and how long the meeting is going to be. And I work very closely with Shalini. And, one of the things I think as salespeople, and I'll admit myself, is we get comfortable with our clients. So I made sure that this is exactly what I did in a meeting this last week with Shalini. I wanted to be able to reinforce exactly what she was looking for, and she told me what she wanted. The buyers also said, come to those meetings better prepared, asking better questions, knowing more about the business, because they can see a real difference when somebody comes with prepared questions. They demonstrate that they've done their preliminary research and that you can identify exactly what my needs are. Give more time and thought to the meeting rather than being a cookie cutter type meeting or presentation. The surprising part, this is where the buyers said that less than 10% are doing a great job in front of them. Now, we talked about what it would take to switch vendors. And what the buyers said there was to make their life easier, or be able to demonstrate that you can do something that the incumbent is not doing. Show a cost benefit, show the ROI. Show them how you can make money or more profit or productivity. But you got to show them the numbers. Just don't say it. They're not interested in what they said was BS. They can see right through that. And they also said it's not about price. And the last thing that they were talking about was the follow-up. And here's another really startling stat. The buyers stated that less than 50% of people or salespeople will actually secure the next meeting. So it may have been a really good meeting. There may be some interest on both sides. And the meeting ends with the salesperson saying, well, this is great, and I'll get back to you. But they're not specific about the next date and time. So that's what they really do want. Okay? So let's just find out from Corey and Marianne, from your perspectives, what is it that you want to be able to see when a salesperson comes to you? So I'm going to turn the tables, and we'll turn it to our guests. Who would like to start?
I'll go first, Lisa. It's Marianne.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lisa, my personality trait is a driver. And with having that trait, I need everything to be precise, direct, and to the point. And I need that meeting moving along fast pace. I don't have a lot of time for chit chat at the beginning of the meeting, and I need to ensure that they need to ensure that the information they're providing is qualitative. So all of the data and information is right there at first glance for me.
Thanks, Marianne, and it's great that you've been able to share your personality style and how that's so important. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in today's webinar, so thanks. So Corey, what about you? If a salesperson wants to impress you, what do they need to do?
Well, for me, Lisa, I think we're all familiar with the term value proposition, and there was a time not that long ago where just having a clear value proposition that was specific to a market was good enough. That caused you to sort of stand above the rest. The problem is everyone that now, has now figured out how to have a clearly articulate value proposition. So what I'm looking for now is for that value proposition to be customized specifically to my business needs.
Very good. Excellent. And so again, it's about doing that research and better preparing and customizing that value proposition. Exactly. So ultimately, and that leads very nicely into what we talk about, the value pyramid. Because here's where, when we take a look at this, so many salespeople are supplying their products and services and doing a good job of selling. But according to buyers, they're looking for people to provide solutions and be more of a consultative salesperson. And that's something through CPSA, we're huge advocates about the consultative selling process. However, based on the feedback that we're getting from buyers, they're looking for somebody even more than that. Their departments have really been streamlined, and a lot has happened over the last couple of years with the economy. So they're really looking for extensions to their department. They're looking for strategic partners who they can rely on, be able to provide advice, information, to be able to help educate and help them become more effective in their business and grow their business. So that's really what it's about, looking at how do we elevate the game. So here's the real conundrum. And this is where I've been speaking to a lot of different salespeople about this, because it's all about bending over backwards. But one of the things that Corey and Marianne and I were talking about this week was, yes, you can bend over backwards, but how far do you go? And then it all becomes more about how much are you servicing your client versus something that you could be looking at differently is how do you actually, improve your A game? How do you start to elevate your sales skills so that you can demonstrate to your client that you are really different than your competition? So a bit of a conundrum. How far do you go? Which is really bending over backwards, but we want to be able to take a look at it and how can we actually help you to raise the bar and be able to increase those sales skills. So that's what we're going to do in today's webinar. We're going to be sharing some of those very simple techniques on what it is that you can do to be able to elevate your game and become better in front of your customers. So we're going to walk you through what we call the 5 phases of the purposeful sales conversation. We've been sharing this in our last couple of webinars because one of the things that we realize is walking in front of your client, doing a sell and tell type pitch doesn't work anymore. The sales cycle is longer, more complex, and there's several different stages to the purposeful sales conversation or the sales cycle in order to effectively close more business. It's all about being able to build a case rather than doing a sell and tell. So it's about really doing that research and finding out the background. Understanding the customer's objectives and their goals, challenges, and prioritization. Because even though you may have the best solution, is it what that client is looking for right now? Then you can propose a solution that's going to meet their needs, but more importantly, their goals. You then have to be able to take it a step further and show them the benefits. It's not just about the features and all, the sizzle or the shiny new stuff that's a part of your products and services, but what are the benefits and how is it going to circle back and help them with their business? So you got to show them the numbers, the financial justification, and the ROI. And then that's where you can lead to the last step, which is how can you co-create and collaborate an action plan that's going to secure that business. So let's just take a look at the first conversation. This is something where we've been introducing this with a lot of the different sales teams that we work with, and there's been a lot of aha moments going on. The economy has really eroded a lot of people's sales confidence. And one of the things that we're seeing is many salespeople who've been very, very successful in the past, who've got 5, 10, even 20 years of sales experience. But all of a sudden, what has made them successful in the past is not necessarily what's going to drive them forward. So it's all about having that self-conversation and about doing that preparation. It's becoming the new P as part of the 4 Ps. And so it's about creating that research. What is your strategy? How will you help this client in their business? And also anticipating what the objections are. Anticipating their questions so that you can thoroughly think through, and that will help you to develop a better strategy and a better case when you go to meet with this client, whether it's a new client or an existing client that you've been working with for a number of years. So there's all sorts of things that you can do for research and preparation. I've had some many great conversations with salespeople on doing this. There's a lot of great information here, and certainly we'll make this PowerPoint available for people to be able to take a look at. So Marianne, when you're working with your sales team, what is the research and the preparation that they're doing before they meet with their customers?
Well, Lisa, part of it, their number one focus, our sales team is a lot of long-term employees, very well experienced and diverse and very successful. And so having the opportunity of going through the CPSA course has helped them expand on those skills. And so part of that preparation is really defining and the 8 steps of the consultative sales process and just outlining it in point form details, pre-planning that call, whether it's mentally or on a piece of paper has definitely helped them in that preparation. Also putting some tools in their hands with using a sales cube analysis to analyze the customer's business on how their sales are tracking before they go in and have that presented and to present to them. And, obviously our first opportunity is we look to growing inside our existing customers first before we look at targeting brand new customers. Going back to ROTI.
That's right. And working with so many different customers who are growing their business. And we look back and analyze the majority of that growth is coming from existing clients. And Marianne, it's interesting that you say, I think so many salespeople don't take the time to look at, where the sales to date are. And I know when I was working with your team and also with other teams, this is key information. I mean, the buyers, they don't have time to always look at where things are at. And I think sometimes the salespeople and even the customer are surprised when they're either, behind or ahead of sales of last year. And that's a key piece of information and certainly enables the salesperson to navigate that conversation with the customer very, very differently, depending on whether they are ahead or behind in sales from last year.
Yeah, absolutely, Lisa. I think with us being able to do that homework going in and actually giving the highlights to the customer, we're doing actually the customer's work for them and helping them analyze the business. At the end of the day, it's going to be beneficial for both parties. And again, one of the value in the value proposition that we bring to the table, a part of the relationship we have with our customers is providing that analysis in detail. And not only just providing it, coming with ideas and solutions and having good conversation about how to grow the business. This is where we are, but how can we continue to grow it?
So there's a simple technique. Just by being able to look at those information and those sales stats and be able to have some of that information and be able to share it with the customer. I don't think you can assume that your customer knows where you're at. So let's move on to the next stage of the purposeful sales conversation, which is the compelling reason to meet. And this will be either with an existing customer or even when you're trying to be able to get into a new prospect. And Corey mentioned this about the value proposition. So, Corey, do you want to expand a little bit about this? What is it that your team is doing about creating a compelling reason to meet?
Well, we're trying to Your last slide, Lisa, you talked about all the research and planning that you can do before meeting with these clients. We're trying to get better at doing those things and reading their annual reports and really trying to understand their business needs. But unfortunately, everyone else can do that as well. So we're feeling that alone's not giving us a unique understanding of their business needs. So we're trying to take it a step further and trying to find ways to talk to other vendors that are already doing business with that company. Our company, for example, provides insurance services to companies like Intact. Well, if we're trying to understand Intact better, sure, we can read their website and their press releases, but we also know auto body shops and law firms and property construction companies are doing business with Intact. We're trying to align ourselves with those other vendors to help us better understand Intact's needs, for example.
Very good. So then, Corey, one of the things that we were talking about is, unique value proposition. And we've had a number of discussions over the last couple of weeks about this. What's the difference between a unique value proposition and further customizing it?
Well, for me, it's demonstrating that the salesperson has done enough homework to truly, typically the value propositions that are on brochures or on their websites really just generically cover about 50% of my needs. They would, in order to make that value proposition specific to my objectives, they would need to invest some time in better understanding my business. And that's very evident to me in a sales meeting. If they've found a way through their research or their sales skills to better understand what I'm trying to achieve and take their generic value proposition and show how specifically it can help me achieve my business objectives, I can tell they've done the homework, and that puts a salesperson more on a consultant than a peer level, because I truly begin to believe that they understand my business enough to help me with it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's just taking that further customization. One of my other colleagues talks about ditching your pitch and being able to do that. And so most people are saying, well, how can we do that? So I wanted to be able to, again, simply provide this technique. Here's a simple phrase that any salesperson could use. And I actually used it this morning when I was constructing an email to send to an existing client and what we could further do for them. So again, simply by, we offer the only, because it shows what is it that you do differently, which will help you, which is what the benefit to the customer. And you then need to be able to take a look at how do you create this for your company, and then how will you further customize it? And it's simply by just tweaking a few words in each parts of these phrases that will make all the difference. So it's not a lot of work, but it's the effort that you put in that will make all the difference. So moving along, we're now having the opportunity to be able to meet with this customer, whether it be a new prospect or even an existing client. So we want to be looking at the purposeful sales conversation. And again, this is where many people are hearing about the consultative selling principles of asking, not telling. Yet so many people know this, but I still see so many people go in and then still, get into their pitch mode. So again, you can ask yourself, what is your strategy and what is the outcome for this meeting? And then being able to prepare your list of questions in advance. Now, Mary Ann had mentioned just a few minutes ago about her personality style. I think one of the things that a salesperson has to very, very quickly assess when they meet with somebody is, what is the personality style? Because that's where you then can start to adjust. So, Mary Ann, do you want to have anything? You mentioned that you're a driver. And how do you adjust your personality style when you're selling to others?
Well, it's definitely not an easy chore. I think it's for anybody, it's not easy adapting. But I think understanding each of the personality traits and understanding how they want to see the information and how they want to hear it, I think allows you to adapt easier to presenting to that personality trait itself. And sometimes it's hard to understand what their personality trait is in advance of that first meeting. And so, I challenge our team to network with peers and perhaps other people who have done business with this individual to see in advance if we can understand what their personality trait is. Because I really believe understanding that personality trait and delivering a purposeful sales consultative conversation and meeting will definitely benefit us of having more of a successful sales call. Not understanding it, you can immediately see in a meeting where you can be losing the buyer. they'll immediately start looking at their email or answering a phone call, and you've lost them. And it's really hard to get that back. So as salespeople, that first couple of minutes at the start of a call, when you haven't met somebody, there's a lot of things that you have to do in that short time. And, it's building that rapport and relation with them and trying to see a connection. Perhaps it's spanning the room, looking for something, a trophy or a picture that you can help bring some common interest. And just through some short conversation, perhaps it'll help you easy to find what that personality trait is and allow you to steer the meeting in the direction you believe it needs to go to suit that personality trait.
Yes, definitely. I mean, this is where how many of you as salespeople, have had this amazing sales meeting with a client. The synergy was there. You totally connected, and you thought, wow, you walk out of that meeting on a complete high. And then you walk into the next meeting, and you apply the exact same approach because you think, yeah, I've nailed it. I finally understand the sales process here. And it's totally different. And so many salespeople will come to me and say, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? And quite often they haven't done anything wrong. What they have done wrong, though, is they haven't adjusted their personality style to match the personality style of the person they were selling to. So when we take a look at personality styles along this horizontal line, it's about taking a look at what is their communication. Do they speak slowly and quietly, or do they speak fast? And are they very talkative? So that's one axis to look at. On the opposite axis, the vertical axis, it's taking a look at their organization skills. So are they very formal and logical? Is their desk neat and orderly? Are all their papers in a filing system or well organized? And are they wearing a watch or very, very conscious of the time? Versus somebody who's not as organized, who make decisions more on emotions than facts and figures. And again, once you're able to quickly assess the personality styles of that person, you can then navigate the conversation very, very differently. In Corey's team, certainly they've got all sorts of different salespeople. And even, Corey, when you're working with your different salespeople, it makes a difference based on their personality styles too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It actually helps us decide if we're going to assign people to more account management roles versus pure new business roles.
So there's so many different applications to the personality styles. And also for those of you, you can use it in your day-to-day selling or looking at how you apply it to your sales teams. And also it's always interesting to know, what your spouse and your kids' personality styles are, because certainly we know that our selling doesn't stop at the end of the day. So let's move on. Here we are ready to navigate that conversation with the customer. And at the Canadian Professional Sales Association, one of the things we're most well known for is our 8-step consultative selling process. And for any of our American friends who may be on today's webinar, we call it the consultative selling process. So we have 8 steps, and this provides a framework. This is what many of the buyers said that they can really see the difference between a good and a great salesperson, that they're following a framework. Here's one of the things that I've been able to observe. There are a lot of salespeople who will tell me that they're applying the consultative approach. So typically, that's what we see as the first 4 steps of the consultative selling process. They're greeting, building rapport, developing relationships, establishing the context of the purpose of the meeting, engaging the customer to be more interactive during the presentation, and they're asking questions. But it was actually one of Corey's colleagues who pointed this out when we were doing some of the training. He says, most people do step number 1 to 4 fairly well. But it's steps expanding on step number 4 and through to number 8 that most salespeople are not doing. And this is what you can really do to differentiate yourself. So not just asking questions, but asking more and better questions to really understand the customer's goals. Only takes 30 seconds, but summarizing and prioritizing builds huge credibility. And again, demonstrates you're listening and only takes 30 seconds. Allows you to explore solutions, co-create and collaborate. What about this or what about that? Step number 7 is a step that we recently added when we expanded on the professional selling program by quantifying benefits and ROI because we knew how important it was to justify the numbers. And then step number 8, which surprisingly, the buyers are saying only 50% of salespeople are doing this step. So there's the difference. Again, we're sharing with you some of the techniques that will help you to become better in front of your customers. So let's take a look at one of the key principles of consultative selling and the consultative selling process is all about asking questions. And one of the things that we're really trying to help salespeople do a better job of is just not asking good questions, but asking great questions. So Marianne, in working with your sales team, are they asking better questions, and how is that benefiting your sales team and your customers?
Well, Lisa, we've actually thought that we were asking great questions, and then we challenged ourselves with the exercise and the training of developing great questions, and we really learned quite quickly that, our questions were good, but adapting or changing or tweaking them, they really became great questions. A couple that come top of mind, one is, what are your current obstacles you believe are in your way of being even more successful than today? And for us, what that does is, when we're helping to build the solutions, this will allow us to investigate, what are their current challenges or obstacles that they're facing today. Very good way of having them. Obviously, it's a very open-ended question, so we're going to get we hope to get a lot of conversation going from the buyer with asking a question like that and helping us understand their business even further.
Mm-hmm. And the litmus test is when you ask those types of questions, and many times the customer may not even be thinking about how to respond to that, but when they go, wow, that's a good question. And the salesperson needs to... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've actually I've had our team come back and say, the customer said that's actually a great question. And we've actually surprised them with some of the qualities of these, the great questions and taken them off guard because it's a bit different from the questions that we had asked in the past. Mm-hmm. One question that we think is great with new prospect potential customers is, can you tell me how the buying process is structured within your organization? Going through the sales training and really understanding ROTI, we want to make sure that we're dealing with the decision maker. And how can you ask him politely, are you the decision maker? Do you have the power of veto? Do you have that control? And so we found that was a great question to really understand who makes the buying decision. Is the person that we believe the buyer, is he the buyer? Ensuring that we have the right face time with the right people, and again, optimizing on our ROTI.
Very, very good. And one of the things that I've discovered is that most salespeople think, oh, I can't ask any more questions because they're only giving me 10 to 15 minutes of time. When you ask a great question and the customer actually says, boy, that's a great question, it always buys you more time. Because all of a sudden they realize that they're dealing with somebody very, very different. And they're willing to give you more time because they realize that you're somebody who can actually help them in whatever they're looking at challenging or trying to be able to grow their business.
Yeah, Lisa, on a weekly sales call we had this week, I had one of our sales reps really excited. We share our successes and challenges at the beginning of the call, and he was really excited about how well this first call went. And he said the customer did 65% of the talking during the time of the meeting. And I congratulated him because to me that really shows that we're embracing the great questions. And the better the question, I believe, the more information we're going to get from the customer.
So, Marianne, as a sales leader, I understand one of the things that you did is you've been creating a list of these questions.
Absolutely. We have a list. And we share it with the team. And we've even gone as far as laminating the list so they have it in their portfolios. And some of our sales team have actually gone the extra step. And when they are preparing for their sales call, they have a couple of the questions already written down in their notebook, prepared so when they go in the call, that they will for sure address them and have it already pre-written out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, Corey, do you want to expand anything? Have you seen a difference in your team between asking good and great questions?
Yeah, I'm glad Marianne brought up the concept of ROTI. Lisa, you really helped us with this. You got our salespeople so focused on calculating their return on time investment that they were realizing that they weren't asking good enough questions to even get the inputs required to calculate ROTI. I mean, in order to calculate ROTI, you need to know what the expected revenue of that account is going to be, potential profitability, additional services that you might be able to cross-sell in. So they'd come back, I'd ask them to calculate the ROTI, and they realized their questions weren't good enough to even have the inputs to be able to make that calculation. So the asking great questions had a dual purpose for us. It helped our salespeople understand where to best allocate their selling time, but also better equipped us to come back to clients with proposals that truly helped close the gap between the current and ideal future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So one of the things that I'm hearing from both of you is how you're continuing coaching your sales team on asking better questions in your sales meetings and in your discussions.
Yeah, absolutely, Lisa. In our weekly sales call, we share the successes and also discuss the challenges. It allows the team to hear other challenges that are occurring, and other team members and peers pipe in to help with different situations that they've been in to work around those obstacles. Coaching, role playing is something that we've added to our sales meetings as well. And also just expanding on the skills side is really understanding financial calculations as well. So ensuring that we can also talk the same language that our buyers are now talking today as well.
Very good. So then by asking all those great questions, it allows you to be able to circle back and be able to present a much better solution to your customers. And so again, this is not just about being able to sell any of your products and services, but again, I think the theme here is preparation and customization. So taking a look at how your products and services can perfectly address the client's needs and goals. Being able to collaborate with your client to explore solutions. And one of the things I'm a huge believer is, looking at, are you providing quotes to your clients, which is all about, price, or are you providing proposals, which is about providing solutions? And I'm a huge believer in sharing the strategy of a 3-option proposal. And this morning, one of the things that I love to receive is an email from any of the people that I'm working with on how well this is working. So here's a salesperson, a business owner that I've been working with over the last couple of months, and he's applied a lot of the strategies. But he certainly hadn't really embraced the 3-option proposal. And we looked at ways to help him grow his business. So he just shared with me that he'd met with a client. The client had a $3,000 budget. He asked all sorts of questions and went back and provided them with a solution of a proposal of 3 different options. Now, I've simplified this proposal, but he had 3 different options here. So you can see that worked around the budget, okay, a little bit below, a little bit above that, and then option number 3 at $5,000. But he showed different value and was able to demonstrate and show the numbers and the ROI. Well, the client came back and chose to go with option number 3. So here you are. Clients told you, only got a $3,000 budget, but then chose to go with option number 3 because this salesperson was able to demonstrate that his option number 3 solution was the right solution to help them to achieve the goals of this particular event. Almost doubled his sales with this particular client. 66% increase here. So simply by providing a 3-option proposal strategy will enable you to grow your business with an opportunity that's right there in front of you. So that's all about looking at how do you look at, yesterday we were talking about features versus benefits. Benefits deliver value to customers and influence buying decisions. Features don't. So you want to use the word so in order to be able to connect the feature with its associated benefit, to highlight the so what for the customer. So Corey or Marianne, do any of you want to elaborate a little bit more on being able to be much more value or benefit driven in your selling with your team? Oh, I'm putting them on the spot now. Let's see how good they do. How's your team delivering benefits as opposed to just features?
Well, certainly,
Lisa, go ahead, Court.
Well, certainly, for us, I don't know, Lisa, if this exactly answers your question, but being able to just fall back on rattling off features has been a bit of a comfort zone for our salespeople, just because that's something that they can apply generically. But what you really, and that's just noise to the clients. They hear that all the time. It's just become a very commonplace. But then taking that feature and explaining why that feature is beneficial to them, obviously, that's the harder piece of work. And obviously, when we do that, we get a much broader audience.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it goes back to that, just taking it that next step and customizing it for the customer.
Yeah, it's all back to customizing the value proposition. I mean, the value proposition to me is a feature, but then the benefit of that is how you're going to customize that value prop to help me achieve my business needs.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, nicely put. And Marianne, you wanted to chime in with something?
Yeah, I was actually, the customers today are basically saying, what's in it for me? And really selling on the benefit, and Corey said it perfectly, and I mean that exactly works for our industry as well, is they need to understand the value that feature brings to them, and really that's that benefit, and that's the what's in it for them, and that's what the customers want to hear today, and if they hear it, I believe we're going to be more successful at selling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. So, leading to the next and final conversation, which is the follow-up conversation. And we call this securing the next step, because in most cases, you can't always close the business in this conversation, but we want to at least be able to secure the next step. So in this conversation, in this stage, again, you want to be able to reinforce what is it that you have that's unique and valuable, and how your products and services are now solutions to help the customer achieve their goals or improve their productivity. In addition, you can provide success stories and references. People are looking for proven successes. So you can demonstrate what you've been able to do with other customers that's enabled them to get those kind of results. When they can hear those proven success stories, then they feel that much more confident to be able to proceed. You want to also continue to coach your customers in the decision-making process to be able to secure that business. Again, asking those types of questions or reinforcing, especially if you're looking at the 3-option proposal and looking at having them do something that's beyond what their initial budget was. But the most important technique here is securing the next date and time. One of the things that I see is that so many people have their BlackBerries or iPhones, so they have their calendar right there in them. So it's a great opportunity for you to be able to take that out and say, you know what, let's take a look at our calendars. What's your schedule like next week? How about Tuesday at 2? And whether you're going to be going back to them with a proposal, one of the things that I see is too many salespeople will email them the proposal. You want to be able to walk through that proposal with them, explain the different options. And so you want to be able to secure that time when you're going to do that. And you can do that in another face-to-face, or it can be simply another telephone call. But being able to walk through those options and really understanding, have you been able to circle back and be able to provide them the solutions that are most relevant to their needs, but more importantly to their goals. So that's why it's so important to be able to secure that next date and time, whether to meet or even have that telephone conversation. Now, again, they may say you've provided that proposal, you've presented it, they like the different options. Quite often we see 80 to 85% of buyers will like option number 2 or option number 3, but they still need some more time to think about it. So again, they say, I'll get back to you next week. We know most buyers don't do that. So again, the opportunity to again secure that telephone call. When would be the best time to call? Would it be okay if I follow up with you next Friday? How about 11 a.m.? You can even send them a meeting invite through your Outlook. It's just a 5-minute conversation or a 15-minute call to be able to do that follow-up. People are appreciative of that. Now, again, depending on personality styles, and certainly Marianne has shared that she is a driver. So, Marianne, would it be okay if I secured that next step like that?
Absolutely.
Very good. Okay. So we've been able to walk through the 5 phases of the purposeful sales conversation. And here's the thought-provoking question that we have for you. Now, some of you are probably saying, I've heard a lot of these things. But the real question is, what skills will you master in front of your clients and prospects? Because the reality is, the buyers are telling us that less than 10% of salespeople are doing a great job. Whew, those stats hurt. So even though many of you are saying, we know this stuff, what is it that you will do to elevate your skills and take it to a whole new level? I know even during, since the April 15th webinar, there's simple things that I've been doing, being more succinct, tighter with my communication. And it's making all the difference. It's that few degrees that's making the biggest results. So what skills will you master in front of your clients and prospects to outperform your competition? Because that's what's key. If you're doing this, okay, based on what buyers are saying, others are not. And ultimately, not only will you earn their trust in business, but you're also going to earn their respect. And I think that's what a lot of salespeople are looking for. Now, we do have a number of programs offered through the Canadian Professional Sales Association to help you gain the competitive advantage, to really master those techniques, and to hold you accountable to learn them, practice them, and really apply them. We have our professional selling program. We can offer it in class. We have a number of cities across Canada that's being offered in these cities in English and French. It's also offered online, or we can come into your organization and be able to do that if you've got 10 or more salespeople and further customize it just for you, your sales team, and your customers. We also have our Elevate Sales Coaching Program. We developed this program a couple of years ago based on, again, the feedback we heard from sales leaders like Corey and Marianne, who said, our people have taken training. They know this stuff, but there's a huge gap between what they know and what they're actually doing. So this is a 12-week program, 1 hour a week, that allows us to look at different strategies and techniques and then hold the salespeople accountable to apply it in their day-to-day selling to be able to come back. Be able to share successes and challenges, and it's amazing the transformation that happens during those 12 weeks. Now, if you're really looking at becoming the creme de la creme of the sales profession, you may want to consider the Certified Sales Professional designation. Now, Corey, you've mandated that your entire team had to complete the CSP certification. Can you share with us what were the benefits to your team in completing their CSP certification?
Yeah, sure. Two benefits, Lisa. The first is it was very positive, had a very positive impact on our culture. When we brought everyone together for the initial kickoff of the course, it was the first time a lot of these salespeople who were across Canada came together, and that was very positive from a cultural standpoint. And then we did a lot of learning together, and at the end when we wrote the exam, that also brought the salespeople together in terms of some impromptu study groups happened, and people were cheering each other on in terms of succeeding in the exam process. And the exam process is quite rigorous, so it really caused them to go back and become even more familiar with the learning material than maybe had they just done it in seminar format. And really, the second benefit, to borrow some terminology from the course itself, is it allowed us to close the loop on our planning process. We set out to become a higher performing sales organization. We committed to the training, and without some sort of a metric, to sort of measure if we were achieving a higher performing status, we would have felt like the planning cycle wasn't closed. So having the exam and the certification process helped us close that loop and measure whether we were truly becoming higher performing.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. And certainly I know it made some of your people a little bit nervous about being able to do this. I was able to find out today that 22% of people who complete their CSP certification earn it with distinction. So that's 85% or above. And one of the really neat things about Corey's team is 50% of his sales team actually earned it with distinction. So that's...
Yeah, we had some fun with that. That's a funny story, Lisa. We had one individual, we all wrote our exams across Canada at different time, but we had one individual who wrote a few weeks before everyone else. such that his marks and results came back before everyone else had a chance to write, and we learned that he had got distinction. So that sort of set the bar, and there became this fun sort of healthy competition amongst the sales staff and trying to do as good as they could on the exam. So it was fun and created, again, a good cultural impact.
And certainly elevated the bar. And that's what it's all about, creating that healthy competition and being able to do that. And here's some successes by some of the other people that we've been working with at CPSA. Direct Energy is also a huge advocate of the professional selling of the CSP certification and have mandated it with their teams in too. And then Brian Moore, who was one of our buyers and panelists in our last webinar, also believes highly in the professional selling program. So let's take a look at our interactive poll results. And I think we might have time for one or two questions that we've been getting. So the first one was, how much time do you prepare before you meet with a prospect? Well, 2% only stated that they wing it. 29% look at the website. 28% said they spend time researching industry trends and company news. And actually 42% say they prepare a list of questions in advance. I'm glad to see that. Now, my next question would be, how many of those are good versus great questions? So, poll number 2, how much time do you prepare before you meet with a client? So, only 1% admitted that they know their client well enough. 8% said they think about it while driving to the meeting. 29% review their sales to date with the client. 41% again prepare the list of questions in advance. And 21% of salespeople on today's webinar state they have a documented account plan. So Corey, there you go. Some great information that you can be sharing with your sales team next week when they're doing their account plans at their sales conference. Poll number 3. What methods do you find most effective to be able to connect with a prospect to be able to set up a meeting? So 62% said telephone call. 1% said text or BBM. 35% email. 0% say LinkedIn or InMail. And 2% is direct mail. Boy, that's really interesting. And I'm hoping that they interpreted the question because one of the things that we heard from our buyers in April 15th webinar is many of them are ignoring the telephone and not even answering the telephone, or they're certainly not returning phone calls. And the last question, have you increased your sales over last year? Well, here's some good news. Only 10% of people say that they're under 10%. 8% are just under 10%. 19% have stayed the same. 28% are up 1 to 10%. And actually 35%, the majority, say yes, they've increased their sales by 10% or more. Overall, 63% of people who are on today's webinar have actually increased their sales. So that's really, really good news. The reality still is when we look at the perception of what buyers think, even though their sales may be up, there's a lot of ways that they can continue to grow that business. So let's, we've got a couple of questions here. So, Marian, I'm going to pose this question to you. We had a salesperson say, are most buyers analytical or drivers? So what do you think when you and your sales team are meeting with buyers, what personality styles are they?
That's a really great question. In our industry, I would say more than 50% are definitely analytical. So
and that's in the hardware industry.
Yes, higher percentage to be analytical than drivers.
So certainly preparation is very, very key when you're meeting with those types of buyers and having a lot of information to present to them. Corey, what about you? Oh, sorry, Marianne. What was that?
No, I was just going to say detailed, precise information.
Mm-hmm. So, Corey, what about you?
I'd say, given the nature of our product, we oftentimes find ourselves in a more formal purchasing environment, and in that environment, typically, we see a lot of analytical types and quasi-procurement roles.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So again, preparation is very, very key when you're meeting with those types of personality styles. And
critical.
here's another really great question is, what are some nice ways to ask, are you the decision maker? This person says, my experience is everyone thinks they are the decision maker.
Yeah, I'm never offended by the question. Is there anyone else that I should be including? You'd like me to include in this email or this meeting, or is there anyone else that you'd like to invite? That's a subtle way that certainly I'm not offended by. That starts to flesh out who on the team is going to be a stakeholder in the decision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great way to be able to put it, because when you ask the question, are you the decision maker? They always say, of course I am. But when you can say, who else will be involved? Who else could I include in this meeting, in this email? And then that's a way to be able to find out who else is involved. So some great questions. Well, that's going to wrap things up. Here is wrapping things up with our webinar today. Thank you very, very much to both Corey and to Marianne in sharing another very impactful webinar filled with great advice, insight, and sales techniques. Also, thanks to all of our webinar attendees who are investing their time this afternoon. We hope that this was well worth your ROI. And again, my question is, what techniques will you master in front of your next client meeting? Please take 1 minute to answer the 5 quick questions that we want to hear your feedback on today's webinar. The survey will pop up as soon as you close the webinar window. This webinar has been recorded, and we'll be posting the recording on the CPSA website along with our website, and you can still listen to the recording of the April 15th webinar then too. You'll receive a follow-up email with the recording link. So thank you very much. Please feel free to contact CPSA or myself. It's been a great pleasure to share the afternoon with you along with Corey and Marianne. And we wish you all the very best in being able to outperform your competition and prove to buyers that you're much better than what their perception is. So thanks, everyone, and make it a great sales day.